Assalamu alaikum, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Dr. Zuleha's channel, Zuleha Keskin 101. My name is Zainab. I'll be your host for today. Today, we're just going to be discussing Hajj and the journey. As you all may be aware, Dr. Zuleha Keskin, inner peace advocate, has recently come back from Hajj, home from Hajj. Because technically, when you come back from Hajj, you leave a piece of home with you and you feel like a bit of homesick. Tell us a little bit about that, Dr. Zuleha.
Yeah, it's a good point you made there, Zainab. When you do go there, it's what you said is true. You're coming home, but are you coming from home or are you leaving home? So it does feel like you leave a part of you there. At least you leave a part of your heart there, because your heart is so connected there that it is actually quite hard to leave. And to some degree, it does feel like you're leaving home when you leave Hajj.
Tell me about your journey getting to Hajj, because everyone's journey, like obviously we're selected. Those who do, and me completing Hajj myself a few years ago, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala handpicked us to be in his house. So tell us about that process, what that was like for you.
So when I did go to Hajj this year, it was very, very exciting. And one of the reasons is because I actually intended to go last year. And, I had everything finalized. Mentally, I thought I was going to go, but it didn't eventuate last year. I didn't actually get a package. So the system has changed with Hajj, and you have to book packages online. Gone are the days when you go to a service provider and they, say, oh, yeah, where's your money? Here it is. And they give you tickets. And so last year, even though I was so wanting to go and I was ready, I was not able to go. And I was actually very heartbroken that I couldn't go last year. But everything happens for a reason. And so this year, when I actually got a package to go, me and my husband got a package to go, we were super excited. We were stoked. And it did make me realize I shouldn't take it for granted that I will go to Hajj, because last year I couldn't go and I could have passed away since last year. So I could have passed away having not done Hajj. And like you said, Allah has to invite you to Hajj based on a hadith. So I felt like this year I did get the invitation, and therefore Allah opened the pathway so that I was able to go.
So it was kind of like the Hajj pre-test. So you had this like little test where you didn't make it, and then you had this test where you did make it. So like what do you give, what advice would you give someone who has that intention to go, but for whatever means cannot go in that year? What did you do during that year or so, you set the intention to go the next year, that really think helped facilitate the rest of your Hajj journey for this year?
I did end up making a lot of dua, saying, Allah, I really want to go. Please let me be one of those who you do invite. And I think that was the difference really between this year and last year. Last year was like, yeah, I want to go, so I'll go. This year was like, oh, Allah, I want to go. Please grant me the opportunity to go. So I knew that I didn't have full control of this particular trip. And the reality is we don't have full control of anything. So it's very interesting. From very early on, you learn things in your Hajj journey. Even before you go to Hajj, you learn things about life that you can apply to all aspects of life. So like I said, in this example, I realized that I don't have full power whether I do something or not. If Allah allows it to happen, it will happen. And with Hajj, it was very clear, black and white, that was the case. And then it makes me reflect on my other everyday life experiences and other things I put my mind to, whether I want to do or not. And I realized I don't have absolute power over these things. Allah does. So you surrender.
I was just about to point that out. So surrender is the key. Surrender to the will of Allah and focus on what you can control. Like you could control your du'as, you could control your intention, you could control those things around you, but you knew that the outcome came from Allah. So you just went with and surrendered to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's will, which is quite beautiful. So I'm really keen to know. Tell us a little bit about some of your highlights of your Hajj trip.
Okay, so with the highlights, I would say that there were two. There were many, but the two that really stand out to me was Arafat and Muzdalifah. With Arafat, the day of Arafat is something else. It's truly amazing. You're going to the plains of Arafat. and before that, there's this anticipation because you know that it's a time when it's the day, based on hadith, when the most people are forgiven. Allah forgives the sins of the most people on the day of Arafah. And you think, I want to be one of those people. And you also have all these du'as that you want to make. It's a day of du'a. So much so that your Dhuhr and Asr are combined for Dhuhr time, and your Maghrib and Isha are combined for Isha time. So one of the wisdoms behind that is you have this chunk of time between Dhuhr and Maghrib when you're just making dua. And so there's that, sense of, okay, this is the meeting. I have, we obviously make dua to Allah other times, but this was special and I felt it was special. And so I had this number of hours where I was going to pour my heart out and I was going to ask for all these things and I was going to do all this soul searching, and I did all that. And so there was this amazing, amazing energy, amazing feeling on the day of Arafah. So that energy that you feel on the day of Arafah is something else. You feel this connection with Allah. Like, I don't know if I felt that connection with Allah that much at any other time. To be able to dig deep inside and to bring it all, to your tongue in the form of dua was absolutely beautiful to be able to do. And I knew it wasn't just me because I was there with other people too. And I'm looking around, everyone's got that connection. Everyone's, shedding tears or just begging, pleading to Allah. And it was this truly humbling experience to have that. And I also had the blessing, I should say, of going to the Mount Arafat. And because at one point our guide was saying it's too hot, don't go. We're talking about 45 degrees. It's a very hot day. And she's like, it's too hot, don't go. Yeah, it's very hot. I was thinking, no, I won't go. She's got a point. Let's be, realistic and don't put our health at risk. But then after a few hours of doing dua, I thought I'll go for a bit of a walk, a bit of a stretch. Some of the other Hajis there were saying, oh, I went to Mount Arafat. I'm like, what? Oh. And someone else said, I went. And I went. I thought, well, if they went, I'm going to go too. So I put it in my mind that I will go. And it was a 15 to 20-minute walk. So it wasn't actually too far. And I guess the risk is if you stay there for too long, because once you're standing on Mount Arafat, you feel the intensity of the sun on you. You're just perspiring. It's hot, but it's an amazing scene. Zainab, this amazing scene of white. You see all these people dressed in white, obviously in ihram, on the mountain, and it just looks beautiful. You just, I guess, realize as humans we're all wanting the same thing. They're making dua on Mount Arafat to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It was just an amazing, amazing view.
It just it's kind of symbolic, like you explaining that. It's kind of reminding me of the Yom al Hashr, the day of standing, where the sun is over our heads, and you just see people just making dua everywhere. Also, it's explained in different hadith. And you mentioned, like, what were your feelings in that moment when you're just you, the sun, and standing? What are some emotions that came up?
Emotions that came up were, Allah, forgive me before I get to the day of resurrection. Do forgive me before I get to that day, because as you said, it reminds you so much of the day of resurrection. Because there's a hadith does say that the sun's going to be very close to us on the day of resurrection, and people will be perspiring, and they'll be perspiring to different levels, some up to their ankles, some up to their knees, and so forth. Obviously, we weren't perspiring to that level where we're up to our knees, but you are perspiring. You feel like the sun is so close to you. And you've got all these people like in the ihram, simple clothes. It honestly did feel like the day of resurrection. Felt humbling. It was very powerful. It was a reality check, thinking to myself, Zuleha, are you ready for the day of resurrection? Because you're getting a snippet of what it's going to look like. And where you are here now, you don't have any of your worldly possessions with you. You don't have your wealth. You don't have your positions. You don't have your children. All those things are not there that you can show. All you've got is yourself and your deeds, which is what it's going to be on the day of judgment. So it was very humbling, but at the same time, there was a lot of soul searching and asking myself, are you ready? Are you ready for that moment?
You actually mentioned earlier the day of Muzdalifah, the night of Muzdalifah. Tell
Mm,
me a little bit about that and why that was a highlight for you. I'm guessing it's
yeah,
related to what you just spoke about, but I'd love to hear more.
yeah, it is related. We got into Muzdalifah quite late. So one of the rituals of Hajj is you stay one night at Muzdalifah. We actually got into Muzdalifah quite late. It was about 2 a.m. because you can imagine, like, we're talking about 1.8 million people. They all have to be at Muzdalifah on the same night. So there's a huge process of getting everyone there at that time. And so our bus got there quite late, but that was okay with me because by that time you get there, a lot of people have already settled in. So we
Mm,
come in with the buses, and then the buses just drop you off there, and you just see rows and rows of people lying down. And to be honest, it reminded me of a grave because you had these people all lined up. Like, in a grave, it's all like lined up. You've got lines of people. Well, you don't see the people, they're under the ground. But the only difference here is everyone's above the ground, but you've got rows and rows of people lying down and sleeping. And they're wearing white. Again, I'm thinking white, shrouded. So that's why. And in the hadith, our prophet says that sleep is the brother of death. So I'm thinking, because when you're sleeping, you look pretty much dead. And we might fidget here and there, but most people, it's like death. It's a reminder of death. Our prophet has told us that. So you're seeing all these millions of people sleeping in rows, not moving. And I thought, subhanAllah, you would not see a scene like that anywhere else where you've got
mm,
millions of people sleeping under the stars in white clothes. And so it was just this extraordinary view. And it reminded me of, I guess, the day before resurrection or just before resurrection. Because then in the morning of Muzdalifah, you wake up for Fajr, morning prayer, and everyone starts to rise. So they're from their sleep or their mini death, they're rising up, and it's like this resurrection. Everyone's getting up, coming to life, getting ready for their prayer. But it reminded me of the day of resurrection when we will all
mm.
be lifted out of our graves. It was a stunning view.
So not only did you get a five-star hotel reception, you also got a kind of rebirth out of that experience or an example of our resurrection. So tell me a little bit about your tawaf al wada, because tawaf al wada is a very unique experience for everyone. This is where we started off the interview, where you kind of leave a part of yourself at tawaf al wada, your conclusion tawaf, the last time you pray in the haram in that moment. What
Yeah.
is that
If I
like for
could
you?
step on my tawaf experience before the final one, if that's okay,
Yeah,
because
go.
the tawaf for me was I loved doing tawaf. I don't know. I'll say I don't know why. I kind of know why, but I just loved it. It was like, um, you're just walking around the Kaaba, and you're looking at the Kaaba, and you're also thinking, wow, this is the building that I've been praying towards all this time, all these years, since my childhood. Turks, they have prayer mats. I've got a picture of the Kaaba. And so you're like, I've seen so many pictures of it. I've been told about it, and here it is, real life. This is what we're praying towards, and I'm so close to it. So there's this powerful moment like that. And so when you're doing tawaf around the Kaaba, there's this energy. It really feels like at that point that this place, the first house of Allah, is the spiritual center of the world. That's what it felt to me like. And you can understand, I guess, why, there's so much history, so much that's happened in that location, but you feel this magnetic attraction towards the Kaaba. I don't know if you've seen pictures, Zainab, of, there's like a magnet, and there's metal files that they put around it, and they kind of draw to it, but they draw to it in rows.
Mm,
Sometimes when you look at it, it actually looks like Kaaba, and it looks like people around it are, praying, but it's actually a magnet with metal shavings. So
mm,
it was like that, where the Kaaba, or what the Kaaba location of the Kaaba is, like this magnet, spiritual magnet, and we're all drawn to it, and we're going around it. Because otherwise, when you think of it, the Kaaba is just this cube shaped. There's nothing spectacular about it, like
mm,
physically speaking. I mean, so you're not drawn to the physical beauty of it. You're
mm,
drawn to its spiritual meaning or the spiritual presence that exists where it is located. So that sense of doing tawaf was really something amazing to me. Just on that thing of doing the tawaf, I was very amazed by the diversity. And this is something I thought would not happen. I never thought I would be surprised by the diversity, because I knew Muslims are coming to, to do Hajj from all around the world. But, in Australia, it's a very multicultural country. So I thought, I'm used to diversity, but I wasn't used to diversity at that level, not in the Muslim community. And so you have people from countries, you've just heard of or you've seen on a map, like Tajikistan, Uzbekistan. I mean, other countries you've heard of, like Bosnia, Nepal, India, Brazil, you name it, there's people there from those countries. And that was just beautiful, because when you're doing tawaf, you're all like this, you're close to each other. So you see them, you rub shoulders with all these different people, and you know that they're from all different walks of life. So there's this beautiful sense of unity that comes in when you're doing this tawaf, and you're basically like a river, or like the flow of a river going around the Kaaba collectively. I was very drawn to doing tawaf. So at night times I would, for example, go and do tawaf whenever I got the chance. And it was a very peaceful experience. And so doing the last one, I thought, oh yeah, it's going to be another good experience. And it was beautiful. But that's the thing with Hajj, you get surprised. You're filled with surprises. And I got very emotional. And I wasn't expecting it. Like, so there's some things you expect to be emotional about, but some things you don't. And I wasn't expecting myself to get emotional about doing my final tawaf and my farewell tawaf. But I just got so emotional. And I guess I knew deep down that this was the last one I will be doing before leaving that holy place. So it was it was heartbreaking. It was like I wouldn't say like a breakup, because Allah is everywhere. But it was like I knew I wasn't going to be this close to the Kaaba once I do this farewell tawaf. And that really hurt my heart. And I guess it goes back to what you were saying, where you feel like you're leaving a part of you there, because it's never the same after that.
Subhanallah. That's just, ooh, I'm lost for words. It just sounds like such a surreal experience for you. And I could definitely resonate and relate when you were talking about being drawn. I remember my experience going to the Kaaba for the first time. I was on the top, so I couldn't see. I didn't have that like direct contact with the Kaaba, and when I saw it, I was very disappointed. And there were cranes, and there were all this stuff everywhere. And then only when I actually did the tawaf and followed the footsteps of for the footsteps of Ibrahim alayhi salam, and that's when you feel that gravitational pull. That's when you're actually performing the actions and what we're taught. So thank you so much for sharing those feelings.
That's the point you made about cranes is also a good point, because we talk about how you're drawn to the Kaaba, but the reality is you've got these cranes in the background. You've got these huge hotels that are right behind it, which are like, they're huge. There's the clock towers now. There must be thousands and thousands of accommodation there. But with Hajj, I guess with everything in life, you have to be able to overlook those and focus on what it is that you want to focus on. So you have to be able to sort of blur them in your mind and focus on Kaaba to be able to truly appreciate the Kaaba. And that's the other thing I think that a take-home message I got for myself, with our everyday life, we're going to have distractions like those cranes, like those huge hotels. But will you focus on them and think, why are they there, da, da, da? Or are you going to say, okay, this is what I will be focusing on, and I can blur everything else out, at least for this point, so I can appreciate this blessing. It's a really good, everyday practice that we can apply to make sure we focus on what it is that we want to focus on, which we think is going to spiritually benefit us.
That's so true. All right. I think we can conclude with two things. One, a few take-home messages of what the Hajj experience has given you. And we haven't heard anything about Medina. Take it away.
I think there's a lot of things that happen in Hajj that happen in our real life. Like, for example, when I was mentioning the tawaf, when you're doing tawaf, it's beautiful, but you do have moments of struggles. Like, it could be, especially when you're getting close to the Hajj al-Aswad, people are coming in or coming out, because that's where the starting point is. So it gets a bit like clogged up, or people are going different directions. And I thought, that's like life. Sometimes it's smooth sailing, and sometimes you have these points of block. You feel like there's a blockage, or it's a bit more struggle. There's greater struggle. It reminds you that this is life. it's never going to be smooth sailing. You might have moments of good smooth sailing moments and appreciate them, but when you have these struggles, then it's normal. It happens, and it's about how you respond to it. What do you do in that situation? Another take home message for me was before you go to Hajj, you hear a lot of people saying it's going to be hard like this, it's going to be hard like that. And so you're mentally prepared that there's going to be challenges, and there is. And I think people get challenged in Hajj in different ways. For some people, the crowds are very challenging. Because again, not everyone might follow the rules, or you might not like big crowds, you might not like being elbowed and so forth. For others, it's okay. For me, the crowds wasn't such a big issue. I think I was like, it's okay. I get it. I get it. It's a big crowd. Everyone's from different cultural settings. For others, the challenge might be their health. Like a lot of people end up getting quite sick there because you've got so many people bringing viruses from so many different parts of the world. Some people get very sick and that's their test. For others, it could be the heat. And this was one of the, hottest Hajj seasons that we've had. And it was scorching hot. And normally when it's very hot, we stay indoors. You can't stay indoors. You've got to do your Hajj rituals there. You've got to walk, for example. So it's 45 degrees and you're walking for kilometers and kilometers. So in a way, that was one of my struggles was the heat. And you just think, okay, I knew there were going to be challenges. So you kind of generate this energy or strength to get over the challenges. And I thought to myself, in life, it's like that too. We're going to be tested. When you're mentally prepared that you're going to be tested, you do so much better with those tests. But when you're not expecting tests, it's like hitting a brick wall or hitting a pole. Like I think we've all done that in our lives where there's a pole we don't see and we hit it and it's like, ouch, and it just shocks us. I think with life tests, it's like that. When we know that we're going to be tested, and Allah tells us in the Quran, He will test us. He will test us. And when you accept that, when tests happen, it's not like, why did this happen? It's like, okay, I've got to draw the strength to get through this. What do I need to do to get through this? So if we can do that or have that mindset in Hajj, I think we can have that mindset in our everyday life as well. So that was a take-home message for me as well. And with jamaraat, just mention the jamaraat as well. With Hajj, there's a lot of rituals. It made me truly appreciate rituals at another level. Like with prayer, even we have rituals, we bow down, we prostrate. They're very powerful. The rituals are a very powerful part of active worship. But some of the rituals, like I hadn't done before, like, throwing stones at a wall, which is Satan. I wouldn't say I was skeptical, but I wasn't sure what I would get out of it, basically. But it was very interesting. Before I actually went to do the stoning of Satan, I heard one or two stories of real life examples of where Satan has broken families, where Satan might come and say, da da da, what do you think? And da da da. And then before you know it, a husband and wife can divorce. Before you know it, the kids have got trying to choose whether they should go with their mum and dad. Yes, divorce happens, but sometimes it can get very, very ugly. Through those stories, and then knowing that I'm going to Gemini, I thought Satan is playing such a destructive role in lives. Satan can destroy me. Satan can destroy families, which is the fundamental unit of society, and Satan can destroy societies. So keeping that in mind, and then stoning Satan, it made it so much more powerful because all of a sudden I was able to, I guess, objectify Satan and to say, yes, this entity exists who is there to make our life hell or who is there to try to distance us from Allah. So it was that powerful. And can I just explain? You can tell I've just come back from Hajj. I can't stop talking about it. When we're walking towards the Jamaraat, which is where you stone Satan, like you've got guides and they have flags. They have flags. The people in your group know who to follow. So for our guide, he had an orange flag. So it's like, don't lose the orange flag, don't lose the orange flag. Otherwise, you're going to get lost, and that's not a good thing. So you're following the flag like this, but then others are following a blue flag, white flag, and so forth. But it just felt like we were going into a war with Satan, basically, because it's a struggle. When we're talking about jihad, the literal meaning is struggle. There's a lot of struggle involved in Hajj. So it's like, we're going on this war, and now, with the flags up, you're just visualizing, and everyone's going, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. And then when we get to where you stone, guide is holding the flag, and he's basically pointing to us where where we have to stone. So he's like this way, as if to say, charge this way. And so we're all going that way, and we're stoning the Satan. And you do at that moment realize that there's this object outside of you who wants to destroy you. And it's a very powerful moment. I think objectifying the Satan like that was very powerful. Still, I feel like it's rewired my brain where I now am more conscious that there is Satan. Yes, we all know it, but how much is he trying to influence our everyday life? How conscious are we of that? It was a very powerful act in that sense as well, the stoning of Satan, and seeing so many people again doing it collectively.
That's very profound what you said, in the sense that we're on this constant battle between our nafs, and we're on the constant battle between the obstacles that come our way in this dunya, and on top of that we have this external entity who's trying to harm us as well. So having that consciousness really brings to light, and also helps you have that self accountability and muhasabah, and to be kinder to ourselves against all the odds that are affecting us. So thank you so much for sharing that point. And you've left us all in suspense about Medina. We haven't heard anything about Medina.
Medina was beautiful. I have to say, I didn't end up spending too much time there. It was 3-4 days compared to 14 days in Mecca. If Mecca reminded me a lot about the history, because you talked about Hajj radiallahu anha, you talked about Ibrahim alayhi salam, we're talking about Adam alayhi salam with Arafat, without going too much into the details. It's very much about the history of the prophets. It's very much about monotheism. When we think about Ibrahim alayhi salam, we think about monotheism. It's very much about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For me, Medina, the seerah was very prominent. Prophet sallam was very prominent, obviously, because he's buried there. And so it truly is a beautiful place, especially, I guess, going into the masjid. There's this amazing, peaceful feeling. And you just think, wow, he's buried just a few hundred meters away from me. Knowing that in itself is just truly something else. Even in Medina, I went to Mount Uhud. Going to places where events took place, it helps you connect with those historical events, because you think, they say, oh, that's where the Qurayshis were coming from, and this is where that's where the archers were.
It brings the history to life. Essentially, being there, it really helps you connect more with the Prophet and strengthens your, so from what I'm hearing, the Kaaba strengthens the concept of Tawheed and being connected to God, whereas Medina, you are connected with the messenger and his life and historical elements around that. And it's not just a story anymore, standing on the mountain of the arches. You're seeing the plains of Uhud in front of you, and you're bringing the stories to light.
That's right. Yes. Yeah, things that we've heard saying, that's where this happened, this is where that happened. As you said, it brings it to life. You also, I guess, you realize what a powerful messenger he was, that he was able to capture the hearts of so many. They're interconnected because he relayed a message, but that message was from Allah through the Quran. But that message reached so many hearts, and you see the millions of hearts that it's reached. So you realize, wow, he had such an impact. He had such an influence that all these people are doing exactly what he told them to do. 1400 years later, he relayed that message so powerfully that we're still doing it today.
Subhanallah.
So, yeah, it was very powerful.
It's food for thought. Thank you so much for enlightening us all with this knowledge, and the experiential knowledge, and also the Islamic knowledge. The work that you do on your channel is so beautiful. It's the best legacy anyone could leave behind, is sharing, information of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala within our communities. And thank you for bringing to light your Hajj journey.
And thanks for the questions, Zainab. Thank you.
No worries. Have a good one. Salam alaikum.
You too. Alaikum salam.